July 1952. 2 nights. The airspace above the United States Capitol filled with mystery. On the evenings of July 19th and July 20th, 1952, radars at Washington National Airport and military installations picked up multiple unidentified targets moving through restricted airspace over Washington, D.C. Pilots were scrambled. Local air traffic control and military personnel logged returns that, on their scopes, accelerated, stopped, and reversed course in ways that did not match any known aircraft. Within hours, the story reached the front pages. Within days, it reached the desks of Air Force investigators and the FBI. This is the Washington, D.C. UFO flap of 1952. An incident documented in Project Blue Book files, FAA and Civil Aeronautics Administration communications, military reports, and FBI memos, and one of the most consequential aerial mysteries in Cold War America. The first, undeniable piece of evidence is the radar data. On the night of July 19th, controllers at Washington National Airport recorded multiple blips on the airport radar scope. Simultaneously, the military's air defense radars tracked targets that appeared on long-range surveillance screens. According to declassified Air Force files from Project Blue Book, the tracks were seen by more than one independent radar installation, civilian and military, at roughly the same time. That multiplicity turned what might have been dismissed as a single instrument glitch into a coordinated anomaly demanding explanation. Hidden in the archive are the contemporaneous logs and operator statements. Controllers recorded positions, headings, and speeds. Technicians later transcribed those logs into Project Blue Book reports. The files show that controllers described objects that would appear suddenly at high altitude, sometimes accelerate to speeds inconsistent with commercial traffic, then halt or make abrupt course changes. Pilots ordered to intercept reported that their onboard radar often failed to lock on, or that jamming-like interference complicated their runs. These are not the isolated hearsay reports of distant civilians. They are documented technical observations entered into official agency records the same night they occurred. The immediate reaction was operational. Air Defense Command units placed airspace under heightened alert. Fighters were scrambled from nearby bases to investigate. At least one newspaper report at the time described the scramble and the confusion in terse, factual terms. Jets were airborne, ground controllers were tracking, but the objects eluded visual identification. The Civil Aeronautics Administration, responsible at the time for civilian aviation control, coordinated with the military. FAA and Air Force transcripts preserved in the Project Blue Book files show controllers and command officers exchanging position reports and attempting to vector interceptors onto the mystery targets. Public reaction followed quickly. The Washington Post and other national papers carried headlines describing blips over the Capitol and the images of a government that could not explain what it was tracking above the National Nerve Center. Citizens reported bright lights, slow-moving objects, or triangular shapes. Telephone lines to control towers lit up with calls. The flap became a media event precisely because it occurred over the seat of government and because multiple official systems, civilian radar, military radar, and interceptor pilots were involved. The incident triggered internal reviews at the highest levels of air defense. The Air Force's official inquiry produced a striking conclusion. Project Blue Book's files and subsequent public statements attributed the majority of the radar returns to a meteorological effect known as temperature inversion. Under certain atmospheric conditions, a layer of warm air over cooler air can refract radar beams in unusual ways, creating false echoes and causing distant weather or ground reflections to appear as moving targets. The Air Force's formal position, recorded in the Project Blue Book summary, was that anomalous propagation explained the sightings and that no evidence of extraterrestrial craft had been found. But that official explanation left many officers unconvinced. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, an Air Force officer who later headed Project Blue Book and compiled its investigations, documented the flap in his 1956 report on unidentified flying objects. Ruppelt recorded that radar operators and some pilots insisted on the reality of the targets because returns were simultaneous on separate radar systems and because trained controllers observed coordinated maneuvers on their scopes. Project Blue Book files include operator statements that resisted the temperature inversion thesis. These statements are preserved in the official record as disagreements within the investigative files. The debate between technical explanation and operational testimony is documented, not invented. The FBI files from July 1952 show that federal authorities took the situation seriously enough to exchange memos about it. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's internal communications referenced Air Force and CAA reports, and news clippings of the flap were circulated among federal offices. Project Blue Book records include summaries of interviews with radar technicians, interceptor pilots, and control tower personnel. Each of these records adds a layer of authenticated detail: time-stamped logs, names of involved units, transcripts of radio calls. The tension is between those dry, recorded facts and the interpretation assigned after the fact. As investigators dug in, contradictions surfaced. If temperature inversion created phantom blips on radar, how did separate radars hundreds of miles apart show coherent tracks? How did controllers at different sites report the same apparent aerial behaviors? And why did radar operators, trained to distinguish weather clutter from the return of a solid target, assert that they were observing something unusual? Project Blue Book's technical summaries acknowledge the plausibility of anomalous propagation, yet the raw operator logs reveal a level of confidence in the sightings that created institutional discomfort. The Washington flap also exposed a deeper procedural problem in Cold War air defenses: the difficulty of rapid identification in an age before modern networked systems. The civilian and military radar networks were not seamlessly integrated. Controllers had different scopes, different display technologies, and different filters for clutter. That fragmentation is visible in the files. The CAA transcripts use different terminology than Air Defense Command reports. Radar screenshots and plots are labeled inconsistently, and pilots' accounts differ in detail from ground scope readings. The result: a mosaic of official records that overlap but do not neatly fit together. One of the most significant documented outcomes was political. The July 1952 events fed public anxiety about airspace security and the unknown. Congressional interest in UFO reports intensified in the 1950s and 1960s. Project Blue Book, already a centralized Air Force program for investigating reports, expanded its docket and its scrutiny in the wake of widely covered episodes like the Washington flap. The official temperature inversion explanation was pressed in public statements, but internal memos reveal a recognition that the public reacted to radar-validated mysteries differently than to isolated civilian reports. The major revelation in the public record is not a smoking gun proof of extraterrestrial origin. It is the existence of a dense, contemporaneous paper trail that resists a tidy dismissal. Project Blue Book files, CAA logs, Air Defense Command transcripts, and FBI memos all confirm that, on 2 consecutive nights in July 1952, multiple radar systems tracked unknown targets over the most sensitive airspace in the United States, and that military aircraft were scrambled in response. The records show procedural confusion, differing interpretations, and an official conclusion that left many on-the-record witnesses unconvinced. Those documented contradictions are the fuel for the enduring debate. On one side are the technical reports: meteorology, electronics, the known quirks of mid-20th century radar. On the other side are the operators and pilots whose first-hand logs and later statements appear in official files, describing behavior inconsistent with known craft. Both sides are preserved in public archives. Neither has been disproven by the other. Project Blue Book closed many cases with conventional explanations, but it left a subset, including the Washington 1952 flap, flagged as unresolved in the sense that operational testimony could not be fully reconciled with the dominant technical explanation. The implications are tangible. The Washington flap influenced how the military assessed unidentified airspace incursions during the Cold War, and how seriously it took radar corroboration. It affected the credibility of official explanations for UFOs. For the public, it marked a moment when government machines, radars, interceptor squadrons, federal investigators, produced an official record that still generates questions. For scholars and policymakers today, the episode is an early, well-documented test case in how civil and military authorities handle anomalous aerial phenomena. The open ending in the files is stark. The Project Blue Book folder contains operator logs and memos that show simultaneous radar returns across different systems. It also contains the Air Force's conclusion invoking atmospheric effects. There is no final, incontrovertible piece of evidence in the public record that proves one interpretation absolutely over the other. No wreckage was recovered, no incontrovertible visual confirmation matched the scope tracks, and the human operators who swore to what they saw remain on the official record as witnesses whose testimony conflicts with the formal explanation. Today, the questions endure, and they are simple and consequential. How do separate, contemporaneous radar systems produce coherent, anomalous tracks? Why did experienced radar operators describe behaviors inconsistent with known aircraft and still see their reports summarized as atmospheric artifacts? How should modern air defense systems reconcile simultaneous, multi-sensor anomalies in real time? The Washington 1952 files do not answer these questions. Instead, they offer an unusually detailed, authenticated archive of a moment when government recorders, radars, logs, memos, military orders, encountered something they labeled unknown. The Washington flap is not a footnote. It is an official dossier. It is evidence that the machinery of state surveillance once recorded multiple unidentified aerial phenomena over the Capitol, and that the official resolution troubled as many professional observers as it satisfied. The documents exist for anyone to read: Project Blue Book files, CAA logs, and FBI memos preserved in public archives. They invite scrutiny, not spectacle. They demand the sober question the Air Force itself could not finally resolve in 1952. When our instruments and our operators disagree, which do we trust, and how do we close the gap between them? That unresolved tension, documented, dated, and debated, is why the Washington, D.C. UFO flap of July 1952 remains one of the most significant cases in the public record. The archive is real, the witnesses are on record, and the official explanation is on the page. But the anomaly at the center of those documents still sits there, unclaimed and unexplained, hovering over the Capitol in the pages of history, waiting for an answer the record itself has yet to provide.